We are about to look into the pages of the first continuous recorded history of mankind in the book we call the Holy Bible. We're going to investigate some of its most controversial stories and discover the answers to some very tough questions. Is the Bible a reliable account of miraculous interventions that rescue people from sudden doom and destruction? Or is it merely a collection of legends and myths, as some modern-day critics claim? Leading experts, both Bible skeptics and proponents from throughout the world, have contributed to the discussion of these biblical questions that may shock and surprise you. According to the Bible, a burning bush appears to a sun-struck shepherd on a rocky hillside. As a result of this miraculous happening, this shepherd leads nearly 2 million refugees out of bondage into the desert. Pursued by Pharaoh's army, the refugees become trapped at the edge of the Red Sea until another miraculous event occurs. The refugees are saved, but the Egyptian army is drowned. Did this really happen? Is the Bible accurate about this account? Was it a miracle or mirage?
The idea that hundreds of thousands of Israelites passed through the Red Sea is crazy. The Bible says that there were 603,000 males, which means over 2 million people who passed through those waters. It most likely would have taken several weeks for all those people just to cross. The whole idea is crazy.
The biblical story of the Exodus is an eyewitness account written by a layman to his contemporaries. Although the writer was not a scholarly historian, there are enough historical kernels indicating that the account is factual from both an archaeological and Egyptian anthropological perspective.
On the face of it, the story of the burning bush is pure fiction, or at least mythology. It smacks of pious enthusiasm. The idea that a bush can be burning and still exist is just not within the realm of possibility.
The biblical story of the burning bush is completely true and totally provable.
Based on recent developments in physical oceanography and meteorology, we can prove today that crossing of the Red Sea would have been possible.
From the burning bush to the parting of the Red Sea, the story of the Israelites' exodus out of Egypt has been a constant source of disagreement among the experts. The Bible gives a remarkable account about the man known as Moses. According to the story in the book of Exodus, the Israelites were a people enslaved in Egypt. They were growing in numbers, much to the concern of their Egyptian slave masters. Because of this, the Pharaoh ordered all male Hebrew infants to be slain. A young mother, one of the enslaved Israelites, could no longer protect her infant son. She put him in a basket and set him afloat on the Nile River near the palace of the Pharaoh. A princess of Egypt found the basket and took the infant to raise as her own. She called the child Moses. Raised in royal surroundings, it was not until Moses reached manhood that he began to identify with his heritage. The story of the Israelites' exodus out of Egypt has been a constant source of disagreement among the experts. Truth of the story of the Exodus in the Bible depends on the answers to 3 questions. Did the 10 plagues summoned by Moses against the Egyptians actually occur? Was there really an enslaved people called the Israelites who made a great exodus out of Egypt? And was it possible that the Red Sea really parted as stated in the Bible?
Faster, you lazy dogs! Hey! Why do you rest, dog? Get to work!
Moses began to take a deeper, more sympathetic interest in his own people. When he began to witness their ill treatment, his anger and resentment began to grow toward the Egyptians.
Stay your hand, pitmaster! Why do you lash this man? Man? These are not men, my lord, but lazy dogs, and the scourge is the only language they understand. Now get to it! Stay! I meant not to kill you.
Moses tried to secretly bury the Egyptian in the sand, but was found out and had to flee to the wilderness of Midian to escape the Pharaoh's death sentence. He was befriended by Jethro, a Midianite priest, and married his daughter. For 40 years, Moses lived the simple life of a shepherd. Then, in a matter of minutes, he came to know his destiny.
I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I have seen the misery of my people who are enslaved in Egypt. You, Moses, are going to go to Pharaoh and lead my people out of their bondage in Egypt.
Who am I to lead the Israelites out of Egypt? Why should Pharaoh listen to me?
Do not fear, for I shall be with you. Take your brother Aaron and go now.
Moses' encounter with the burning bush is one of the most memorable stories in the Bible, and certainly one of the most controversial. We are told by the Bible that not only did the bush burst into flame, but it was not consumed by the fire. This has long been questioned by Bible critics. So he went to Israel to question the experts there on the subject.
At the foot of Mount Sinai, one finds the monastery of St. Catherine. The local story of the shepherds, the nomadic people, the Bedouins, do hold that the actual bush that is found inside the monastery is still the same bush.
I can't confirm or reject that the bush growing at the monastery was the actual burning bush, but it is a specific desert plant that fits the biblical description. It's the fraxinella or gas plant, Dictomnus albus, a sturdy perennial bush with white or purple flowers, common in the Middle East. The bush produces an oil so volatile that it can be ignited by the sun. The oil quickly burns up, but the bush itself is not damaged.
Ramses II was a formidable and headstrong young man, a builder of cities and great temples. He even created the first shipping canal between the Nile River and the Red Sea, 3,000 years before the Suez Canal. Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh and pleaded for the release of their people. But Pharaoh rejected their plea, and God sent down 10 plagues on the land. After each plague, Moses went to Pharaoh and gave him the chance to obey God's command by letting the Israelites go. But each time, the Pharaoh refused.
The main purpose of the Exodus story is not to describe history. The main purpose of the Exodus story, as it was created by the pre-scribes who lived in Jerusalem, was to glorify their God and to make their God look greater than any other God. And what they used was a series of old legends and distorted memories which they put together to create this story which has no relationship to history.
Archaeology provided background information for unlocking narratives and events such as the Exodus account. In this case, the account contains sufficient place names cross-referenced in non-biblical Sumerian and Assyrian cuneiform tablets to confirm the accuracy of the Exodus account, and to assure scholars that it was not an account invented for later consumption. Certain features of the Exodus narrative accurately reflect unique Sinaitic geographic features which only a person who spent time there would ever know.
There's an ancient Egyptian papyrus document called the Ipuwer Papyrus, and it recounts in eyewitness fashion the plague of blood, the plague of cattle disease, the plague of strange fire phenomena, the plague on the firstborn, the strange darkness, all the events that we previously thought we only knew about from the Bible. We can read about it in Egyptian records.
As the Bible describes, the last of the plagues arrived with great drama. God had instructed every Israelite to stay indoors and prepare a meal of lamb or goat. They were to take the blood of these animals and use it as a mark over the door of their houses. On that night, the Lord descended on the land of Egypt, and the firstborn of every Egyptian family was struck down in death. This final plague was the most terrible. Pharaoh lost his beloved son. His resistance was broken. He ordered that the Israelites be set free. They must leave the land of the Nile completely. The Bible says that God provided a cloud column by day and a column of fire by night to guide the Israelites through the desert. According to the Bible, God instructed Moses to make a camp between Migdol and the sea. Their destination was to be the land of Canaan. But Pharaoh soon had a vindictive change of heart and sent his army in pursuit of the refugees.
The spies have returned from Ramses. Pharaoh resents our release now and sends his army to destroy us.
We must put the sea between them and the people.
Have your scouts been able to find any place that we might possibly cross?
There is nothing to the north or to the south. In a week, we might be able to reach the road at Horus in the north. But that would be far too late.
And worse, then we should become a great temptation for the Philistines to come down on us from the north.
Can you place your men-at-arms between Pharaoh and the people?
There's not enough time. Except for the inner guard, my soldiers are dispersed amongst the tribes, trying to make warriors out of brickmakers and farmers. If I could gather them all, we would not be able to stop Pharaoh's archers and chariots.
What else do I see in your face, Joshua?
There are troublemakers about, stirring up the tribes. There is danger within, as well as from the outside.
According to the verses of Exodus 14, the people quickly learned of the Pharaoh's change of heart.
The Egyptians were working us to death slowly. But now Moses has found a quicker way to kill us.
Do all of us despise so much eating from Egyptian flesh pot that we now must fill our stomachs with sand?
Listen to me. If we surrender peacefully, if we go back now, yes, we will be punished, but we will still be alive afterwards.
Which do you prefer? A few lashes or an Egyptian spear in your chest?
Does Moses think he can humble the mighty Pharaoh and still live? Let us tell Moses now. Behold what you have done to us, O mighty Lord Moses.
Do you not see the dust clouds of doom? Do you not hear the earth thundering with the sound of Pharaoh's chariots?
I see, and I hear. What would you have me do?
Make me your emissary. I will go back to the Egyptians, reason with them, beg to return and be forgiven.
Emissary? I will cleave you in two, you traitorous turnip.
Let us hear it all.
Were there no graves in Egypt, Moses, that you let us out here into the wilderness to die?
Did we not speak to you in Egypt of this? Did we not tell you to let us be?
All of us, we told you that it was better to live under the heavy hand of the Egyptians than to die like diseased animals in the desert. But you wouldn't listen. Not the mighty Lord Moses.
Do we want to die out here? No! Or would we be alive in Egypt?
Yes! Peace! Peace! Still your tongues!
Where is your faith? Do you think the Lord brought you out of bondage in Egypt to die on the shores of this sea? Fear not the Egyptians and their chariots. You need do nothing but be still and turn your fears into faith. Then you will see God's power.
The Bible tells us that at God's command, Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and God sent a strong east wind that drove back the waters, creating a path through the midst of the sea. With the pursuing Egyptian army behind them, the Israelites were able to cross the wide opening in the sea in a matter of hours. Pharaoh's army, with hundreds of chariots and thousands of soldiers, followed the Israelites into the sea.
God, thy will be done.
Some critics express doubts that Moses and the Israelites crossed the Red Sea at all. Others do not believe any part of the Exodus, but recently there has been a discovery of some remarkable evidence.
There are certain hallmark pieces of pottery that we look for in attempting to trace the Exodus event and the migration of the Israelites into the land of Canaan. One of these pieces is this very nice pilgrim flask that's very nicely painted, and the shape itself apparently indicated the product that was shipped in it. It comes from Cyprus, but it's important for dating the other material that we find in connection with the Israelites. Another piece that we have is the Philistine beer jug. The Philistines were very fond of drinking beer. Was fermented right in the jug. You can see it was sieved as it was poured out into the drinking vessel itself. The Israelites copied the Philistine ware, which was very highly painted, and came out with a very poor reproduction. So we can always tell when we come into a site that the Israelites themselves have now moved on to this site. Daily there are more and more pieces of evidence that are being excavated that are helping to demonstrate the fact that the Israelites came in the Exodus and settled in the land of Canaan.
One of the interesting questions that Emmanuel Anati has answered in his research, and he's one of the top Sinai archaeologists, is the question, what were the Israelites doing during the 40 years that they were wandering in the desert? Well, Dr. Anati has discovered something like 30,000 rock inscriptions, which he dates to the time period of the Exodus, in which he believes the Israelites carved on those hot, weathered rocks.
New findings are being unearthed at several archaeological sites, such as the unusual pottery items and rock drawings, which give hard evidence that the Exodus really did happen. But even as the validity of the Exodus is being scientifically proven, the controversy over the parting of the Red Sea is heating up.
The idea that the Red Sea could have parted into two walls of water, as portrayed in movies by Hollywood movie makers like Cecil B. DeMille, is just not credible.
At this site in 1799, Napoleon's engineers discovered an underwater ridge some 600 feet wide that extended from shore to shore. His engineers calculated the right time for crossing this 5.2-mile strip when the east wind would blow sufficiently to clear the seabed of water. Napoleon, however, barely escaped with his life when a sudden change in the wind's direction brought an onrush of water that covered the strip in just a matter of minutes.
Recently, Professor Doran Knopf of Florida State University, along with Dr. Norman Paldor of Israel, revealed their findings on the Red Sea crossing to the world press.
Dr. Paldor and I were not so much interested in whether crossing of the Red Sea occurred or not, but we were intrigued by the possibility that perhaps there is some explanation for a similar process. So what we did, we developed what we call in physical oceanography a mathematical model of the part of the Red Sea where many people believe that crossing could have been. Okay, what we have here now is a physical model of the Red Sea. The deep part supposed to represent the main body of the Red Sea, which is about 2,000 or 3,000 feet deep, and the shallow part, with the one with the sloping bottom, supposed to represent the Gulf of Suez, which is much shallower. As we said before, the average depth of the Gulf of Suez is about 100 feet, and the length is few hundred miles. Okay, what we have in addition to this, we introduced here an artificial ridge, which you see right here, and the depth of the water above that artificial ridge is only about 10 feet high. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to let the wind blow from here, and you will see how the water recedes and in fact exposes the ridge to the air. Okay, so what you can see now is that most of the water, in fact, to the left of the ridge is blown away. There is still some water there, and you see that there is an exposed area right there. All right? So the idea is that the Israelis crossed on this part of the ridge which was exposed, and they saw water on the two sides, right? They saw the water on the left side of the ridge and the water on the right side. And I'm going to cut the wind off now, and I'm going to do that abruptly, and you will see how it comes back. So let's do that. And of course, what happens after that is that when the wind relaxes, the water wants to come back to the position that it had before, and it does that via a gravity wave, which moves at the speed we calculated to be like 15 feet per second or so, which is, of course, a speed that one cannot escape.
Oceanographers have established scientifically how the Israelites may have crossed the Red Sea in their escape from the pursuing Egyptians. The worldwide media coverage of the Knopf-Paldor experiments and findings leave no doubt that the Israelites could have crossed the Red Sea exactly as described in the Bible. The Israelite exodus from Egypt is more than a story of 10 plagues against the Egyptians and the miraculous crossing of the Red Sea. The real story is about a God who takes care of people, and about the leadership of Moses, a man who in time of crisis relied on faith instead of retreating or surrendering. When people think of you some years from now, will they remember you as someone with a bold faith or a person who retreats from problems? Something to think about.